He disguised himself as a beggar to test his children, but what he witnessed made him change his entire will. The grand ballroom of the Vance conglomerate's prestigious headquarters hummed with a nervous energy, a palpable tension coiling amongst the city's elite. Crystal chandeliers glittered, reflecting off polished marble floors where the assembled heirs and executives fidgeted in their custom-tailored suits and gowns. At the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by stern-faced lawyers, sat a woman. She was impeccably dressed, her silver hair styled with an elegance that defied her age. Her eyes, though piercing, held a profound weariness that seemed to have settled deep within her very bones. This was Alara Vance, the legendary founder of the multi-billion-dollar Vance conglomerate. Across from her, slumped in their chairs, were her children, Theron and Serafina Vance. They looked utterly bewildered, their faces a mixture of confusion and growing alarm. Just moments ago, they had been openly mocking an unkempt old woman, dismissing her as a harmless lunatic. Now, that same woman, transformed, was declaring their entire world irrevocably changed. "The game, my dears," Alara Vance announced, her voice resonating with an authority that had built an empire forged from sheer will and an unshakable belief in purpose, "is definitively over." She gazed at her children, her expression unreadable, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips, a silent testament to the meticulously executed plan. Theron scoffed, still recovering from the shock, convinced this was some elaborate, cruel joke, perhaps a bizarre performance art piece staged by their eccentric mother. "Mother, what is the meaning of this charade? And who is this creature you brought in?" He gestured dismissively towards a young woman standing quietly by the door, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear, her simple clothing a stark contrast to the opulence of the room. Serafina, ever the more dramatic, let out a choked gasp, clutching at the exquisite fabric of her gown. "Are you well, Mother? You've been acting quite strangely lately." They still hadn't grasped the true gravity of the situation, still saw only the woman who had, moments prior, looked like a vagrant, and now, mysteriously, looked like their mother again. The irony was not lost on Alara. They had treated her, their own mother, with such contempt, such callous disregard, that even now, presented with the undeniable truth, their minds struggled to connect the dots. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place for the assembled few, the murmurs of recognition rippling through the room, but for Theron and Serafina, the true picture remained agonizingly, almost comically, out of focus. Their ignorance, Alara knew, was about to cost them everything, a price they were utterly unprepared to pay. How had it come to this? How had a woman who had dedicated her life to building an empire founded on innovation and philanthropy found herself in a position where she felt compelled to masquerade as a destitute stranger to test the very core of her own bloodline? The question lingered in the air, a phantom ache in her heart. The story, like so many tales of immense wealth and human frailty, began with a dream, a vision of a better world, and ended with a profound, bitter disillusionment that had finally pushed her to this drastic measure. Alara Vance had built the Vance conglomerate from the ground up, starting with a single, groundbreaking idea in sustainable energy and expanding it into a global powerhouse. Her childhood had been one of scarcity, of quiet determination, where every penny was accounted for and every opportunity cherished. She remembered the gnawing hunger, the worn-out shoes, the longing for an education that seemed perpetually out of reach. Those early struggles had forged in her an unshakable belief in the dignity of work and the transformative power of genuine opportunity. Her philosophy had always been simple: wealth was a tool, not an end. It was to be used for progress, for upliftment, for the betterment of society, a means to ensure no one else had to endure the hardships she had faced. She believed in hard work, integrity, and above all, compassion, the very qualities she had hoped to instill in her offspring. For decades, her name had been synonymous not just with industry, but with genuine, impactful philanthropy. The Vance Foundation, established in her early years of success, had funded schools, hospitals, and countless initiatives aimed at alleviating poverty and fostering opportunity worldwide. Her late husband, a man of quiet strength and unwavering moral compass, had been her partner in this endeavor, his gentle hand a constant reminder of their shared purpose. His death had left a void, a silent echo in the grand halls of their life, and a responsibility that weighed even heavier on her shoulders. As Alara aged, her thoughts naturally turned to succession. Her son, Theron, and her daughter, Seraphina, had been groomed from birth to take the reins. They had attended the finest schools, received the most expensive educations, and were given high-ranking executive positions within the conglomerate. On paper, they were perfect heirs, intelligent, articulate, and possessing a superficial charm that masked a deeper emptiness, a hollowness Alara had tried desperately to fill. But as the years passed, Alara watched, with a growing sense of dread, as her children became increasingly divorced from the values she held dear. It wasn't a sudden shift, but a gradual erosion, like water wearing away stone, until the very foundation of their characters seemed to crumble. Theron, with his sharp suits and even sharper tongue, saw the Vance conglomerate not as a legacy of innovation or a vehicle for social change, but as a personal piggy bank, an endless source of luxury and power. His office, filled with exotic art and rare artifacts, reflected his singular focus on acquisition. His decisions were driven solely by profit margins, by the bottom line, regardless of the ethical implications or the human cost. He would talk endlessly about quarterly earnings, market shares, and potential acquisitions, his voice booming with self-importance, but never once about the impact on employees, the environment, or the communities they operated in. He had a particular disdain for the philanthropic division, viewing it as a necessary evil for public relations and tax write-offs, rather than a genuine expression of generosity. Alara often overheard him grumbling about the wasted funds, suggesting they could be better used for shareholder value or another of his extravagant whims, perhaps a new private jet or a larger yacht. He dismissed the Foundation's dedicated staff as bleeding hearts and inefficient do-gooders, their tireless efforts met with his sneering contempt. Seraphina, equally ambitious but far more obsessed with appearances, had perfected the art of performative charity. Her social calendar was a dizzying array of galas and fundraisers, each one an opportunity for her to shine. She chaired countless galas, posed for endless photographs with underprivileged children, her smile dazzling, and delivered eloquent speeches about the Foundation's work, her words carefully crafted to evoke admiration. Yet, behind the scenes, her priorities were entirely self-serving. The galas were opportunities to showcase her latest designer gown and network with the city's elite, to secure her place at the very top of the social hierarchy. The charity work was a means to bolster her social standing, to earn accolades and maintain the illusion of a compassionate heart. Alara recalled a particularly painful incident where Seraphina had dismissed a genuine plea for help from a struggling employee whose child needed urgent medical care, citing company policy, with a dismissive wave of her hand. Only days later, Seraphina had donated a staggering sum to a prestigious art museum, ensuring her name was prominently displayed on a new wing, her act of generosity purely transactional. Her empathy, it seemed to Alara, was as thin as the veil of a designer scarf, easily discarded when inconvenient. Alara had tried, repeatedly, to guide them, to remind them of their responsibilities, to instill in them the values of humility and generosity that had been the bedrock of her own life. She had held long, earnest conversations in her study, recounting her own struggles, the meaning behind their family's wealth, the weight of the legacy they were meant to carry. She spoke of her vision, of the countless lives touched by the Foundation, of the true satisfaction found in service. But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears, bouncing off the impenetrable walls of their self-absorption. They would nod politely, offer empty assurances with placid smiles, and then immediately return to their decadent lives, their extravagant purchases, and their relentless pursuit of more. They lived in mansions that dwarfed her own modest, by their standards, estate, drove fleets of luxury cars, and wore enough diamonds to fund a small nation's economy. Their lives were a testament to unbridled materialism, utterly devoid of the warmth and human connection that Alara cherished. It was as if a crucial part of their souls had withered, leaving behind only a ravenous hunger for more. The final straw had come subtly, a series of small, accumulating betrayals that eventually coalesced into an undeniable truth. It was the way they spoke of the less fortunate, not with pity or concern, but with thinly veiled contempt, as if poverty were a moral failing rather than a complex societal issue. They should just work harder, Theron would often scoff, oblivious to the systemic barriers many faced. It was the casual cruelty in their voices when they discussed laying off hundreds of loyal employees to boost quarterly profits, referring to them as expendable assets rather than human beings with families. It was the increasingly aggressive way they began to question her own charitable donations, hinting that she was squandering their inheritance, treating her life's work as a frivolous indulgence. They saw her fortune not as a means to do good, but as a prize to be won, a finite resource to be hoarded and exploited. Their conversations increasingly revolved around her eventual demise, thinly disguised questions about her will, about the distribution of her assets, their eyes glinting with a predatory anticipation. They treated her like a relic, a stubborn obstacle standing between them and their ultimate inheritance, impatiently waiting for her to pass. One evening, after a particularly disheartening dinner where Theron had openly scoffed at a news report about a local homeless shelter, dismissing its residents as lazy burdens on society, and Serafina had complained bitterly about the cost of maintaining the Vance Foundation's community outreach programs, lamenting the drain on their resources, Elara sat alone in her study. The grand room felt cold, the silence heavy. She gazed at the portrait of her late husband hanging above the fireplace, his kind eyes seeming to hold a silent question. He had been a man of immense integrity, a true partner in her philanthropic endeavors, sharing her vision down to his very core. She felt a profound sadness, a crushing sense of failure. Her children, her legacy, had become everything she despised. They were parasites, not inheritors of a noble purpose. It was then, in that quiet moment of despair, surrounded by the echoes of her husband's gentle spirit and her children's harsh materialism, that a radical idea began to take root. A test. A final, desperate attempt to see if any spark of humanity remained within them, any vestige of the children she had once loved so fiercely. She would disappear. She would shed her identity, her wealth, her status, and become utterly anonymous. She would become one of the very people her children so readily dismissed, so cruelly judged. She would become Old Beth. The thought, initially terrifying, solidified into a resolute determination. The planning was meticulous, a testament to the same strategic brilliance that had built her empire from nothing. She secretly liquidated a portion of her personal, untraceable assets, ensuring she had enough to survive comfortably should the need arise, but not enough to betray her disguise or raise suspicion. She contacted a trusted, discreet legal team, led by Mr. Harrison, a man whose loyalty and ethics were beyond reproach. She outlined her intentions, her voice devoid of emotion, and entrusted them with sealed instructions to be opened only after a predetermined period or upon her explicit signal. She then spent weeks studying the mannerisms, the struggles, and the subtle communications of the city's marginalized population. She haunted soup kitchens, observed park benches, and listened to the quiet conversations of those society chose to ignore. She learned to walk with a slight stoop, to soften her voice, to make her gaze seem less sharp, more vulnerable, less the titan of industry and more the forgotten elderly. She acquired threadbare, worn clothing from charity shops, aged them further with dirt and grime, and even practiced applying makeup to create the illusion of weathered skin, sunken eyes, and a general air of neglect. Her once manicured hands were roughened with pumice, her nails unkempt and chipped. She perfected a slow, shuffling gait, and a hacking cough that sounded genuinely painful, designed to elicit either pity or annoyance. She arranged for her staff to believe she was going on an extended, private retreat to a remote meditation center, leaving vague instructions and a sense of her needing solitude after a particularly stressful period. No one was to disturb her. No one was to know her true whereabouts. The house would be maintained, but her personal affairs would be quieted. Then, one quiet dawn, under the pale glow of the streetlights, Elara Vance vanished, leaving behind her opulent mansion, her powerful name, and her multi-billion-dollar empire. In her place, a frail, unkempt elderly woman, her eyes holding a lifetime of stories and a secret, audacious plan, emerged onto the bustling streets of the very city she had shaped. She was Old Beth, and the test had begun. The streets of the city were a stark contrast to the gilded cages of her children's lives. As Old Beth, Elara experienced firsthand the biting cold of indifference, the gnawing hunger of uncertainty, and the crushing weight of invisibility. The city, usually a symphony of her influence, now felt like a vast, indifferent ocean. She wandered through parks, sat on cold benches, and observed the world from a perspective she had never truly known, despite all her philanthropic efforts. She saw the other Old Beths of the city, the silent camaraderie, the shared struggle. She learned which shelters offered the warmest meals, which public libraries had the warmest corners, and which store owners were less likely to shoo her away. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth. She had spent millions to help people like Old Beth, and now she was Old Beth, relying on the often sparse kindness of strangers, feeling the sting of the very neglect her foundation was meant to address. The physical discomfort, the constant chill, the aches in her joints from sleeping on hard surfaces, the perpetual hunger, was a small price compared to the emotional pain, the profound disappointment that gnawed at her. Her first encounter with her children was orchestrated with a cynical precision that only Elara Vance, the master strategist, could muster. She knew Theron had a weekly golf game at the exclusive Royal Greens Country Club, followed by a lavish lunch at the club's high-end restaurant, a ritual of self-indulgence. On a crisp Tuesday afternoon, Old Beth positioned herself near the restaurant's entrance, looking utterly forlorn, huddled against a decorative planter, a tattered blanket around her shoulders, her cough deliberately raspy. Theron Vance, impeccably dressed in his golf attire, emerged from the club, his booming laugh echoing across the manicured lawns, a picture of affluent arrogance. He was accompanied by two equally affluent business associates, their conversation punctuated by boasts of recent stock gains and upcoming deals, their voices loud and oblivious. As they approached the restaurant, Old Beth shuffled slightly, feigning a sudden, hacking cough that drew their attention, a calculated performance. "Excuse me, sir," Old Beth rasped, her voice thin and reedy, her hand trembling as she extended it. "Might you spare a little change? I haven't eaten properly in days." Theron paused, his expression shifting from jovial to one of profound annoyance, his brow furrowed in distaste. He squinted at her, a flicker of something almost akin to recognition, a fleeting, disturbing thought of, why does she look vaguely familiar, crossing his mind, but quickly dismissed as an absurdity, an unwelcome intrusion on his perfect day. This was just another nuisance, an unsightly blight on his pristine afternoon, a smudge on his perfect world. "For heaven's sake, old woman," he snapped, his voice sharp with irritation, his tone dripping with condescension, "can't you see I'm busy? Go on, clear out. There are places for people like you. Don't bother me." He waved her away with a dismissive flick of his wrist, as if shooing a fly, his gaze already moving past her, his mind already on his lunch. His associates chuckled awkwardly, then quickly averted their eyes, following Theron into the restaurant, their conversation resuming as if Old Beth had never existed, as if she were merely a ghost in their peripheral vision. Elara's heart sank, a heavy stone in her chest, but a part of her, the strategist, noted the coldness, the utter lack of a single empathetic flicker. It was exactly as she had feared. A few days later, it was Seraphina's turn, another carefully planned encounter. Elara knew her daughter hosted an annual, charity gala for the arts, at one of the city's most exclusive venues, a place she frequented for its opulent ambience and, more importantly, the opportunity to be seen. Elara, as Old Beth, made her way to the red carpet entrance, timing her arrival for the peak of guest arrivals, when the flashes of cameras would be brightest. The area was swarming with paparazzi, socialites draped in jewels, and luxury cars gliding past. Old Beth, dressed in her most dilapidated clothes, looked utterly out of place, a stark, uncomfortable silhouette against the glittering backdrop, a dissonant note in the symphony of wealth. Seraphina Vance arrived in a sleek, black limousine, emerging in a shimmering emerald gown, her face alight with an artificial smile for the cameras, every movement a calculated pose. As she glided past the velvet ropes, radiating an aura of untouchable glamour. Old Beth stumbled forward, feigning weakness, and gently grazed Seraphina's arm, a fleeting, almost imperceptible touch. "Please, madam," Old Beth whispered, her voice barely audible over the din of the crowd and camera clicks, her eyes filled with feigned desperation meeting Seraphina's. "I'm so cold. Do you have anything? Even a small scarf, perhaps?" Seraphina recoiled as if she had been touched by something vile, something diseased. Her face contorted into a mask of disgust, her carefully constructed smile crumbling into a sneer. "Oh, for goodness sake," she exclaimed, snatching her arm away, her voice sharp with indignation. "Security. Get this vagrant away from here. She's ruining my entrance. How dare you accost me? Do you know who I am?" She didn't even wait for a response, sweeping past Old Beth with a furious glare, her voice laced with venom, her publicist rushing to her side to smooth over the minor incident. A burly security guard quickly appeared, his hand on Old Beth's shoulder, guiding her firmly away from the entrance, his expression apologetic but firm. Elara allowed herself to be led, her eyes fixed on her daughter's retreating back, the image of Seraphina's disgusted face burned into her memory. The test was proving to be a resounding, devastating success, each rejection a confirmation of her deepest fears. Elara endured several more encounters, each one a fresh wound to her already fragile hope, each interaction a hammer blow to the image she had held of her children. She tried approaching Theron at the corporate offices, feigning confusion and asking for directions to a non-existent aid office within the Vance building, hoping to appeal to any faint sense of responsibility. He had his assistant call security immediately, muttering about undesirables making their way in, his face a mask of cold annoyance. She even attempted to approach Seraphina at a high-end salon she frequented, catching her as she emerged, radiant and pampered. "Please, ma'am, I'm lost and haven't eaten," she began, only to be met with a furious, "Are you stalking me now? I'll call the police." Each interaction confirmed the absolute absence of empathy, the chasm of indifference that had swallowed her children's hearts. They saw her, their own mother, as nothing more than a problem to be eradicated, an inconvenience to be swiftly removed from their sight, a stain on their perfect lives. The bitter irony was that these were the same individuals who now managed her philanthropic foundation, albeit in name only, their names affixed to a legacy they fundamentally betrayed. Yet, amidst this landscape of coldness, a beacon of genuine human warmth emerged, a stark contrast that would irrevocably alter Elara's future, a quiet light in the deepening gloom. Her name was Lyra. Elara had been observing the Vance conglomerate's charity division from a distance, curious about the real impact of the foundation her children so carelessly managed. She had spent a cold afternoon loitering near the foundation's public-facing office, watching employees come and go, noting the general air of detached professionalism that often pervaded such institutions. It was late, well past closing hours, when she noticed a young woman still working inside, hunched over a desk, a small lamp casting a warm glow on her focused face, the only light remaining in the building. This was Lyra, a humble intern working tirelessly within the very heart of the Vance Foundation's outreach programs, her dedication almost visibly emanating from her. Lyra was an anomaly in the Vance ecosystem. She wasn't from a privileged background. Her clothes were modest, well-worn but clean, a stark contrast to the designer labels her superiors flaunted. Elara had heard whispers about Lyra's situation from the few genuinely compassionate staff members she still trusted, a scholarship student, supporting her ailing grandmother back home with what little she earned, working 2 other part-time jobs just to make ends meet, all while excelling in her demanding internship at the foundation, often staying late, unasked. Her dedication to the foundation's true mission, to helping those in need, was rumored to be absolute, bordering on fervent, a pure flame in a cold institution. She wasn't seeking fame or fortune, just the quiet satisfaction of making a difference. One evening, as dusk settled, casting long shadows across the city streets, and the biting chill of autumn began to creep in, Elara, as Old Beth, decided to approach Lyra. She positioned herself near the back entrance of the foundation building, a less visible spot where Lyra usually exited, away from the main thoroughfare. She looked particularly frail, shivering visibly, her eyes glazed over with feigned exhaustion, exaggerating her distress. As Lyra emerged, clutching a worn backpack to her chest, her shoulders slumped from a long day, Old Beth deliberately stumbled, letting out a soft moan of pain as she almost collapsed against the wall, a carefully enacted drama. Lyra immediately dropped her bag, her eyes filled with genuine alarm, her fatigue instantly forgotten. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Oh my goodness, are you hurt?" she exclaimed, rushing to Old Beth's side. She gently took Old Beth's arm, her touch surprisingly warm and steady, her concern radiating from her. "You look so cold. And you're shivering. Are you hungry?" Her voice was soft, compassionate, utterly without judgment. Elara, as Old Beth, managed a weak nod. "Just a little dizzy. Haven't had much today. Been a rough week." Lyra's brow furrowed with concern, a deep empathy etched on her young face. Without a moment's hesitation, she unzipped her backpack. "Here," she said, pulling out a modest, neatly packed lunchbox, the contents humble but carefully prepared. "It's just a sandwich and an apple, but please, take it. You need it more than I do." She pressed the lunchbox into Old Beth's trembling hands, her fingers brushing Elara's, a gesture of profound kindness. "And here," she added, shrugging off her own worn, but thick, knitted scarf, the one likely her only protection against the cold. "You must be freezing." She gently wrapped the scarf around Old Beth's neck, her fingers brushing Elara's skin, a touch of pure, unadulterated human warmth that Elara hadn't felt in years, certainly not from her own children. Elara, playing her part, took a slow bite of the sandwich. It was simple, just cheese and ham, yet it tasted like the most delicious meal she had ever had, nourishing not just her body but her weary soul. "Thank you, child," she mumbled, her voice thick with genuine emotion she had to suppress, the words catching in her throat. "You are very kind. A true angel." Lyra smiled, a tired but genuine smile that reached her eyes, illuminating her whole face. "It's no trouble at all. Are you sure you'll be all right? Is there somewhere warm you can go?" She looked truly worried, her gaze searching, compassionate, as if genuinely weighing options to help. "I know a few shelters that might have space tonight, if you need help finding one. I can walk you there." Elara shook her head slowly, feigning a weary reluctance. "I'll manage. You've helped me so much already. You should go home." Lyra lingered for a moment, her gaze still full of concern, clearly hesitant to leave. "Well, please, be careful out here. It gets very cold at night. And if you ever need anything at all," she repeated, emphasizing her sincerity, "please come back to the Foundation during the day. We have resources, we can help." She didn't say it with a detached, professional tone, or with the performative flourish Serafina would use, but with a quiet, heartfelt sincerity that was utterly absent from Theron and Serafina's transactional philanthropy. It was an offer rooted in genuine concern, not obligation. Over the next few weeks, Elara, as Old Beth, sought out Lyra several more times, each encounter reaffirming her initial impression. Each time, Lyra responded with unwavering compassion, her kindness a steady flame. One day, Elara feigned a slight fever, shivering dramatically. Lyra, despite clearly being exhausted from long hours, brought her a warm cup of tea from a nearby cafe, spending her own meager money, and sat with her on a cold park bench, listening patiently as Old Beth spun tales of hardship and loneliness, never once interrupting or showing impatience. Another time, Elara hinted at needing a blanket for the frigid nights. Lyra, on her meager budget, purchased a new, thick wool blanket, not just a used one, and brought it to her, apologizing profusely that it wasn't more, her generosity truly humbling. She even offered to share her bus fare on one occasion, though Elara gently refused, her heart swelling with a bittersweet mixture of gratitude and sorrow for what her own children lacked. Lyra never once asked for anything in return. She never judged, never condescended. She simply gave, from a place of deep, inherent kindness, despite her own struggles, her own precarious financial situation. Elara observed Lyra at work, too, discreetly watching from afar. She saw her patiently guide confused elderly clients through complex paperwork, her voice always soft and reassuring, her smile genuine. She witnessed Lyra go above and beyond, staying late to complete intricate grant applications, truly fighting for the underprivileged, for those who had no voice, a stark contrast to Theron and Serafina, who only visited the foundation for photo opportunities or to sign off on budget cuts that further crippled its effectiveness. Lyra embodied everything Elara had hoped her own children would become: empathetic, dedicated, and truly selfless, a living embodiment of the Vance Foundation's original ideals. Her children, meanwhile, continued their lives of opulent self-indulgence, oblivious to the secret test their mother was conducting, blind to the true character of those around them, their world shrinking to the size of their own desires. The contrast was a brutal, undeniable truth. Elara's last flicker of hope for her heirs was extinguished, replaced by a profound, yet strangely peaceful, certainty. Her will, her legacy, would not be theirs. The day of the annual Vance conglomerate shareholders meeting arrived, a grand affair that also served as the formal reading of any significant legal documents, including, should the occasion arise, the will of the company's founder. It was a day Theron and Serafina had been eagerly anticipating, though not for its official agenda or the company's future. They saw it as the perfect opportunity to further solidify their control, to subtly sideline their aging mother, and to perhaps even hint at her failing health as a justification for taking over completely, a transition they believed was long overdue. Little did they know, this grand stage, this carefully curated performance of power and prestige, was about to become the scene of their most spectacular downfall, a public humiliation they would never recover from. The ballroom, the very same one where Elara had made her declaration moments prior, was packed. Executives, major shareholders, and media representatives buzzed with anticipation, their eyes scanning the room, their murmurs filling the air. Theron and Serafina sat at the head table, radiating an air of smug confidence, exchanging knowing glances, a shared sense of impending triumph. They had already mentally divided their inheritance, already planned their next lavish acquisitions, their imaginations running wild with possibilities. Their mother, they believed, was an old woman who had finally lost her grip, her recent, erratic behavior merely a sign of her inevitable decline, a problem soon to be resolved. The lead attorney, Mr. Harrison, a man known for his impeccable discretion and unwavering loyalty to Elara Vance, a man whose stern countenance hid a deep respect for his client, cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the hum. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice calm but authoritative, resonating through the microphone, "we are here today not only for the annual shareholder update but also for a matter of significant personal importance to Ms. Elara Vance. As many of you know, Ms. Vance recently experienced a period of profound personal reflection. It is during this time that she decided to make substantial revisions to her last will and testament." A ripple of murmurs went through the room, a collective shifting in seats. Theron and Serafina exchanged knowing glances, their smiles widening almost imperceptibly. This was it. Their mother was finally handing over the reins, perhaps even making them full beneficiaries, acknowledging their hard work and dedication. Serafina preened, already imagining herself as the sole matriarch, the benevolent face of the foundation. Theron smirked, mentally calculating the immense value of the assets he was about to inherit, the new power he would wield. "Before I proceed with the formal reading," Mr. Harrison continued, his gaze sweeping the expectant faces, "Ms. Vance has requested a brief interlude. She has a personal statement she wishes to make, and she wishes to introduce someone to all of you." He gestured towards the grand main entrance, the heavy double doors slowly opening. All eyes in the ballroom turned, a collective gasp sweeping through the room, followed by stunned silence. Walking through the grand double doors, not from a discreet side entrance but directly into the spotlight, was Elara Vance. But this was not the Alara they had seen moments ago, nor the Alara they had seen for the past few weeks, the one they believed was losing her faculties. This was Alara Vance in her full glory, a majestic presence. She was impeccably dressed in a bespoke suit of deep sapphire, tailored to perfection, her silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers, styled with an effortless elegance. Her posture was ramrod straight, radiating an aura of unwavering power and authority that filled the vast room. Her eyes, usually softened by age, were now sharp, incisive, missing nothing, their depths holding a quiet fury and an unwavering resolve. She didn't walk, she commanded the space, each step deliberate, purposeful, a queen reclaiming her throne. And beside her, looking utterly stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief, her face pale with shock, was Lyra. Lyra was dressed in her simple, clean, but obviously inexpensive clothes, utterly out of place among the glittering elite, a stark contrast that heightened the drama. Yet Alara held her arm with a tenderness that spoke volumes, a gesture of profound affection and recognition. Theron and Seraphina's mouths fell open, their smug expressions morphing into utter horror, their faces draining of color as they stared, first at their mother, then at the young woman beside her. The pieces clicked into place, brutally, irrevocably, each connection a searing pain. The ragged old woman, the nuisance, the vagrant they had so contemptuously dismissed, was standing before them, transformed, majestic, and holding the hand of the intern they barely acknowledged, the intern they considered a lowly servant. The irony was a dagger to their hearts, a grotesque mirror reflecting their own monstrous indifference. Alara walked directly to the podium, her gaze sweeping over the astonished faces in the room, lingering briefly, chillingly, on her children, her eyes holding no warmth, no flicker of forgiveness. A profound silence descended upon the ballroom, broken only by the frantic click of camera shutters from the stunned media. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," Alara's voice boomed, clear and resonant, amplified by the microphone, each word a hammer blow in the sudden quiet. "I appreciate the opportunity to address you all directly." She paused, her eyes fixed on Theron and Seraphina, allowing the weight of her gaze to settle on them. "For the past several weeks, I have been on a journey of discovery. A journey that has taken me far from the comforts of my home and the privileges of my position. A journey that has shown me the true character of those around me, a truth far more profound than any balance sheet could reveal." She looked directly at her children, her voice growing colder, sharper with each word, each syllable a precise strike. "I wanted to understand, truly understand, what had become of the values I held so dear, the values upon which this entire conglomerate was built. I wanted to see if the spirit of compassion, of empathy, of genuine human kindness, still existed within the very people who were meant to carry on my legacy, my own flesh and blood." Her voice was now a whip, lashing out at their exposed hypocrisy. "So, I disguised myself. I became Old Beth. A frail, destitute old woman, entirely dependent on the kindness of strangers, a mirror held up to society's soul." The gasp this time was louder, more universal, a collective intake of breath that filled the vast space. Whispers erupted, quickly silenced by Alara's unwavering gaze, her presence utterly dominating the room. Theron and Seraphina were pale, their bodies rigid with shock, their faces frozen in a mask of dawning, agonizing comprehension. They looked like statues carved from fear. I approached those I believed would be my most fervent supporters, those who claimed to love me, to respect my ideals. Her eyes flickered to her children, a devastating indictment in their depth, a judgment that weighed heavier than any legal decree. I sought their help. I feigned hunger, cold, confusion. And what did I find? Disdain. Contempt. Threats of security. Open ridicule. A complete and utter absence of a single shred of humanity. Her voice was now a force, a righteous anger simmering beneath the controlled tone. "You, Theron, dismissed me as a nuisance, a blight on your perfect golf day. You, Seraphina, recoiled from my touch as if I were a plague, an embarrassment to your curated image. You, my own children, saw only a problem to be shooed away, an inconvenience to be swiftly removed from your sight, a stain on your precious social standing. She then turned, her expression softening remarkably, towards Lyra, a tender smile replacing the sternness. And then, there was Lyra. She placed a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder, who still looked as if she might faint from the overwhelming reality of the situation, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Lyra, who, despite her own struggles, her own humble means, offered me her last sandwich, her only meal for the day. Lyra, who gave me her own scarf to keep warm, a selfless act of genuine concern. Lyra, who sat with me on a cold bench, listened to my fabricated tales of woe, and offered me genuine kindness, respect, and a helping hand, asking for absolutely nothing in return. She embodies the very essence of what the Vance Foundation, and indeed, the Vance conglomerate, was meant to stand for, the true spirit of human generosity. Elara then turned back to the room, her gaze sweeping over her children one last time, a look of profound disappointment etched on her face, a sorrow that went beyond mere anger. It is with a heavy heart, but with absolute clarity, that I announce my final decision regarding the future of my estate and the leadership of the Vance conglomerate. Her voice was unwavering, each word echoing with finality. My children, Theron and Seraphina Vance, have proven themselves utterly unworthy of the responsibility that comes with such a legacy. Their hearts are barren, their compassion non-existent, and their greed knows no bounds. Therefore, as of today, they are hereby removed from all executive positions within the Vance conglomerate and are disinherited from my will, effective immediately. The silence in the room was deafening, a vacuum created by the sheer magnitude of the announcement. Theron let out a strangled cry, a pathetic sound of disbelief and rage. Seraphina clutched her chest as if she had been physically struck, her eyes wide with uncomprehending horror. Their world had just crumbled before their eyes, a meticulously constructed edifice of privilege collapsing in an instant. Instead, Elara continued, her voice now filled with a quiet triumph, a deep satisfaction that transcended personal gain. I am appointing Lyra to a new, crucial role within the Vance conglomerate, as the Chief Executive Officer of the Vance Foundation, with a substantial endowment to expand its global reach and a directorship on the main board of the conglomerate itself. Furthermore, my revised will stipulates that the vast majority of my personal fortune, including the controlling shares of the Vance conglomerate, will be transferred into a trust overseen by Mr. Harrison, with Lyra as its primary beneficiary, to be used for the philanthropic missions she will champion, and to secure her own financial future, ensuring she can continue her work without personal hardship. Her integrity, her dedication, and her pure heart are the true legacy I wish to leave behind, a legacy of genuine human connection and purpose. The fallout was immediate, brutal, and profoundly satisfying for Elara. Theron and Seraphina, stripped of their titles, their immense salaries, and their anticipated inheritance, were left with nothing but their expensive debts and their tarnished reputations. The news spread like wildfire, a salacious scandal that captivated the city, dominating headlines and social media. Overnight, they went from being the privileged heirs to the laughingstock of high society, their fall from grace spectacular and public. Their lavish homes were foreclosed upon, their luxury cars repossessed. Their credit lines were frozen, their exclusive club memberships revoked. Friends, fair weather and opportunistic, vanished as quickly as their wealth, leaving them truly alone. Theron, accustomed to a life of limitless spending, found himself utterly adrift, unable to comprehend a world where his name didn't open every door. He tried to leverage his connections, but no one wanted to associate with the man who had been so publicly disinherited by his own mother for his cruelty. He attempted to start small ventures, but his arrogance, his lack of genuine work ethic, and his inability to truly connect with people quickly led to failure. He spiraled into a bitter resentment, blaming everyone but himself for his predicament, convinced he was a victim of his mother's senility. He was forced to move into a tiny, run-down apartment, taking on menial jobs he considered beneath him, all while constantly looking over his shoulder, haunted by the ghost of the empire he had lost, a shadow of his former self. Seraphina fared no better. Her social standing, once her greatest asset, became her greatest liability, the very thing she had cultivated now turning against her. The charity galas she once graced now actively shunned her, her name whispered with disdain. Her designer wardrobe had to be sold to pay off mounting debts, each piece a painful reminder of her lost status. The emptiness she had once masked with material possessions became starkly apparent, her performative charm dissolving into a brittle bitterness. She tried to cling to old friendships, desperately reaching out, but her entitled and self-absorbed nature, no longer gilded by wealth, quickly alienated anyone who had once tolerated her. She found herself alone, stripped of the luxuries and the attention she craved, forced to confront a reality she had always believed herself immune to. The irony was palpable. She, who had feigned so much charity, now depended entirely on the kindness of strangers, a kindness she had never extended, a cruel twist of fate. Lyra, on the other hand, was propelled into a world she could barely comprehend, a dizzying ascent she never sought. The shock of Alara's revelation and the monumental trust placed upon her was immense. She cried tears of disbelief, then tears of profound gratitude, her heart overflowing. Alara personally mentored her, guiding her through the complexities of corporate governance and large-scale philanthropy, patiently sharing decades of wisdom. Lyra, with her innate compassion and unwavering dedication, blossomed under Alara's tutelage, her natural talents for empathy and organization finding their true purpose. She approached her new role with humility and an unshakable sense of purpose, her feet firmly on the ground despite the dizzying heights. With the vast resources now at her disposal, Lyra transformed the Vance Foundation. She expanded its reach into previously underserved communities, launched innovative programs for education and vocational training, and established new initiatives for affordable housing and healthcare, impacting millions of lives. She ensured that every dollar was spent with purpose, with genuine impact, not on lavish galas or self-serving publicity stunts. Her leadership was characterized by transparency, integrity, and a deep, personal commitment to alleviating suffering, a true embodiment of Alara's original vision. She purchased a comfortable, modest home for herself and her grandmother, ensuring their financial security, but continued to live simply, her focus always on the mission, on the people she served. Months turned into years. Alara Vance, now truly at peace, her mission accomplished, watched Lyra's ascent with quiet pride. She saw her legacy not in the brick-and-mortar buildings of the Vance conglomerate, nor in the endless accumulation of wealth, but in the lives touched, the communities uplifted, and the genuine compassion that Lyra brought to everything she did. Alara had found a true heir, not of blood, but of spirit, a testament to the enduring power of kindness. She continued to advise Lyra, their bond growing stronger with each passing day, a bond forged in an unlikely test and cemented by shared values, a profound and beautiful connection. This extraordinary tale serves as a timeless reminder that true character is never measured by the depth of one's pockets, nor by the superficial gloss of social standing. It is revealed in the quiet moments of crisis, in the spontaneous acts of selflessness, when the masks of societal expectation fall away. It is in the darkness that the stars truly shine, and it is when stripped of all pretense that the true essence of a human heart is laid bare. Kindness, humility, and genuine compassion, though often overlooked in the relentless pursuit of wealth and power, are the only currencies that hold true value. For in the grand tapestry of life, generosity, like a seed sown in fertile ground, will always yield a harvest beyond imagination, proving that while riches may fade, the quiet dignity of a good heart will forever echo with profound and lasting reward. If you enjoyed this powerful story of deception, discovery, and ultimate justice, make sure to check out our other compelling narratives right here on the channel. We bring you true-to-life tales that explore the depths of human nature, revealing shocking betrayals and heartwarming acts of kindness. Don't miss out on future stories that will leave you thinking long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're always the first to know when we release new content. And now, we want to hear from you. What do you think Alara Vance should have done differently, if anything? Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone's true character was revealed under pressure, for better or worse? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below.